Yeah, I did. Did you confirm that they're the just answer yes or no, because we're not in a hearing right now. The files you sent yesterday included files or photos or bands that were in the set that was posted on the website, right?
No, the demo plan we sent yesterday was not in the overall set. That was an exhibit I sent to Kelly.
I think we're okay.
It's 8:59 and
Hi, good morning. I'll call the meeting of Wednesday, June 17th to order. The first item on the agenda is preliminary matters, and I haven't received any requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or ex-agenda items, so we will just hear the one item that's listed on the agenda. Under announcements and appeals, I have no announcements, and we've had no recent appeals, so there's nothing to report there. And the third item under preliminary matters is comments from members on items not on today's agenda. Is there anybody out there who would like to speak to the staff hearing officer on items not on today's agenda?
Susie, we don't have anyone currently attending the webinar, so I can hand it back over to you.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'll close that portion of the agenda. So we'll move on to the project, and it's an application for a project at 1103 Harbor Hills Drive. Kelly, if you want to give the presentation, you said you didn't have a webcam.
Good afternoon. Good morning. Yes, I do not have a webcam.
Okay, so you can go ahead.
Okay, good morning. Kelly Broadison with Community Development. The project today is a remodel and addition to an existing house on a 15,880 square foot lot in the Hillside Design District. The house is currently 1,700 square feet and a 420 square foot carport. And the project involves the partial demolition of the residence and carport, construction of and remodel of a 2,500 square foot residence with a new 450 square foot garage and a new 431 square foot accessory dwelling unit above the garage. And it also includes remodel of an existing deck and a new trash enclosure. And the reason we're at the staff hearing officer today is because the project requires an interior setback to allow partial demolition and rebuild of the dwelling within the eastern interior setback, and also allow for the partial demolition and rebuild of the dwelling and the ADU and exterior stairs to the ADU and trash enclosure in the front setback. So just to give you a little description of the site, it's about 53% average slope, and as you can see in the elevations, the carport and the front of the house are at street level, and as
Excuse me, Kelly?
Yes?
Can you give Timmy direction on what plan sheet you want him to be on? Right now, we just still see the Harbor Hills.
Okay, I guess it's the site plan. Sorry, I don't know what I didn't know how to look at what the page numbers were.
That's fine. So, okay, so here's a site, here's the survey. Probably go back, Timmy. This is the existing situation. So is that what you're describing now, Kelly?
Yes. So you can
Okay.
see from the topo lines that the
Thank
front
you,
of the
Timmy.
house and the street frontage is even with the street, and the slope goes down significantly towards the rear of the lot. So the house is actually built on caissons. And also an important thing to note is that the actual front setback is 30 feet. However, there's an exception for sloping lots in residential zones. If the average natural slope of the area within the first 50 feet is 20%, the required setback is reduced by 5. So this project site has a 25-foot setback because they demonstrated that the slope is actually just above 20%. So the applicant is requesting a mod for alterations to the existing. So now we can go to the next page, the site plan. Mr. Bolton, thank you. So the applicant is requesting a mod for alterations to the existing non-conforming building and construction of a new garage and ADU in the same footprint as the existing house. And the steep topography of the site and location of mature oak trees makes it infeasible to add on towards the rear of the site. So the addition won't encroach into the front setback more than the existing non-conforming building footprint, and due to its location at the terminus of the street and its adjacency to public parks, there will be no negative impact to any adjacent neighbors or the surrounding neighborhood. So staff is supportive of the proposed front setback mod because, as I said, steep slopes and preserving the existing oak trees. The required interior setback for this site is 10 feet, and the existing structure is already non-conforming to the western setback, and it's only 5 feet from the property line. So the applicant is requesting to keep the same footprint in the setback, but to raise the roof height in the interior setback by 4 feet 11 in order to simplify the roof forms and allow for a more symmetrical front elevation, which was supported by the single-family design board. Let's see. The applicant demonstrated to staff that this project is truly a remodel addition and is not substantial redevelopment by providing foundation plans and a demo plans, which are sheets A.05 and also A2.0. Again, sorry, I don't know what those actual page numbers are on the computer screen. So next time I'll work on that. So staff supportive of the proposed interior setback encroachment for the added roof height because the existing house is non-conforming to the interior setback and the proposal does not increase the amount of encroachment. And the height of the building will increase within the interior setback and not the footprint or square footage of the structure. So the project will have minimal impacts to the western neighbor and can be found consistent with the purposes and intent of the zoning ordinance to allow an appropriate improvement on the site. Also, the project went to the design review board on 2 times, and when the project returned for the second review, the board felt that their comments had been considered because the applicant lowered the roof height of the structure and joined the front facade of the ADU with the main residence, which created a more cohesive design. And they also reconfigured the deck to assist in the protection of the oak tree, and the single-family design board found that the size, bulk, and scale were consistent with the streetscape surrounding neighborhood. Staff conducted an environmental analysis of the project. We required an ARC report that found that there's an unlikely event to find historic archaeological resources. And also because of the surrounding oak trees, we requested an arborist report. And the arborist report requested that the applicant install 3 15-gallon trees to mitigate potential, not probable, but potential impacts to the mature oaks that are within the construction zone of the project. So with those, so staff recommends approving the project, making the findings in the in section 5 of the staff report, and also subject to the tree protection measures that were listed in the staff report, and also the archaeological resources in the unlikely case of finding any archaeological resources on site. And that concludes staff's presentation, and we have Dylan Henderson here, the architect, and also Jens, who is the structural engineer.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kathy. I mean, Kathy, sorry, Kelly. I do have one question regarding what it says, the requesting. It says an interior setback modification to allow for the partial demolition and rebuild of the dwelling within the eastern interior setback. So where is the partial demolition occurring in the interior setback?
The partial demolition is occurring in the, I don't know what you mean by that, because the setback is where this building is, and they have to do partial demolition to rebuild the structure. Maybe the architect can answer that.
Okay, well, okay. So then we'll see when he presents.
Susie,
Ellen?
pardon my interruption. Do you mind if I turn your webcam off and then back on again? We can't see your camera right now, even though you show that it's on. I just want to see if that
Oh,
works.
okay.
So I just
yeah,
stopped
I
sharing
could see
it.
you. Okay.
Yeah, and now can you turn your webcam back on? There you are. Okay, for whatever reason, we couldn't see you. Okay, thank you.
Oh, that's interesting, because I could see me on the screen. All right, okay, well, so is the applicant there? They want to provide a presentation?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, you want to state your name for the record?
Yeah, Dylan Henderson, Salt Architecture.
Okay.
And I have Jens Emil here as well.
Okay, thank you. You can give your presentation.
Okay, great. So if you can go to page 3 of the PDF. Tim. Yeah, so this is the existing condition plan. This is existing house on the lot, which is 1,772 square feet net. And when we looked at the house, there's a carport that's actually inside of the house right now. And so my client really wanted to create the garage and ADU adjacent to the house. That was sort of the first step in the design. And then the roof itself is in a W shape and kind of has a center draining situation going on, which hasn't really done great for the house. And so the other concept was, replace the roof. And so that was the impetus for the design. We can go to page 2 of the PDF. And so these are just perspective views. The big move on this house was to try and get really beautiful views facing out toward the harbor and the mesa in Santa Barbara. And these rear elevations show what that proposal is. We're doing a slight increase. I know in the staff report, they had mentioned 4'11". We're actually only increasing that by 4'4". And so I just wanted to clarify that. So if we look at page 3.1, which is 12 of the PDF, Tim. Yeah, these are the elevations of the house. In the upper right elevation, detail 2, south elevation, shows sort of what the current gable condition is on that north facade, and then what we're proposing. We 4 and 12 allowable increase, and we're proposing a very slight increase beyond that, of total of 4.4. So we're 14'7", 5/8 of height on the main residence. In the staff report, there was a mention of 18 feet, but that really was related to the garage and ADU down on the far left of the page, which is 17'7" and 5/8. And so we're not actually increasing the main residence height very much at all. Another question that came up during the review was on that west side of glass, on the west elevation of glass, you know, what increased to our glazing. So if you go to the next page, Tim, page 13. Yeah, that top elevation, which I label as east, that the directions on this lot are funny because it's at a skewed angle, but that elevation on that east elevation, detail 1, currently have 80.43 square feet of glass, and we're proposing 93.66 square feet of glass, and that's primarily in those 2 front windows on the right side. That has a really Pacific Ocean, so the goal was to increase it there. So looking at this proposal and what our intent is, the demo plan, which is that A0.5 sheet, which is page 6 of the PDF, was something that we worked a long time with Michelle and then Christina and then Kelly. We've had 3 different partners on this over the period of time. And this is a demo plan that we worked on for a long time with structural, a long time ourselves to make sure that we were being very compliant with the sort of rules and regs on what we consider to be a remodel. And I just wanted to turn this over to Jens super quickly so he could describe what we're doing structurally. But 93% of the foundation is staying in place, and we have over 64% of the walls staying in place. And so our intent really is to structurally strengthen the walls as opposed to do any tearing out of the walls. So the question of where is the demo, that east wall, which is existing and is not going to remain, which is that kind of far right side on grid line A, is really what we were looking at. I think that was a little bit of a misnomer in the plan, because if in the staff report, because if you go to page 9 of the PDF, yeah, you'll see that the only demo that we're doing on that is window replacement. That wall is staying in place, the fireplace is staying in place. We're going to come and structurally strengthen that wall, but we are not demolishing that wall. We're not demolishing the wall facing the street for that guest bedroom wing. I mean, that's substantially staying very much where it is, and we're not changing that other than creating our new roof cavity. And so I thought I could turn this over to Jens just to describe structurally how we're doing that so that we're super clear about that, as I know that was a question.
Morning. Yeah, so the idea of strengthening that wall that Dylan was talking about, it's going to be for us to come back in and strengthen it by adding some studs to the existing, will allow us to keep the stud wall in place, at the same time provide all the structural requirements for making sure that the height of the wall is supported, and for any seismic loads to be resolved in the existing wall. The wall as it is now has substantial lengths for us to use, so we're going to reutilize those with our current code required seismic load. The walls are extensive, long, and have enough substantial foundations for us to use and justify the loads getting down to those foundations. We are manipulating some of the loads to move them around because there is a significant number of foundations in there that can support this. So we're just moving that load around to make sure that those are all getting utilized, but they're all staying in place. The new structure, we're putting in caissons and grade beams where those are located, but at only those locations where we're adding on to the building, and the other locations where maybe the load is a little bit higher than the foundation can take. Soil engineers allowed us to put helical piers in to avoid having to make any changes to that foundation whatsoever. So from our standpoint, the foundations are remaining from not just from a structural standpoint, from an economical standpoint, as well as the walls.
So thank you, Jens. So I think from my standpoint, that's it, other than, we've been through several rounds of design review, responded to those questions. The neighbors relative to my client have all been very supportive as he's been talking to them. And I feel like we've done our due diligence to make sure that we're playing really nicely with the neighborhood and designing something that will be beautiful on that block. So the adjacent parcel to the left of this is the part of the Honda Valley Reserve. And so that will be, not occupied in perpetuity. So we are at the cul-de-sac. So relative to the front setbacks being modified slightly for the existing condition and then certainly for the new garage, we are 18 inches back from the existing front facade on the front garage to create some breakup in the mass and scale of that, which the design board supported and made some suggestions to even further that. So I think I was at 9 and we went to 18, and everyone seems quite happy. And so I feel like we've made a sensitive move. And the other comment was that in the staff report, they were saying new deck. It's actually an existing deck, and we're really not changing the square footage of that deck at all. It's almost within a few square feet of each other of what we're doing. We are just modifying the configuration of it slightly, and that deck is not supported particularly well. So we'll be going in and doing structural reinforcement to that deck to make sure it's safe and up to current 2019 structural code as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. I think it's in your application letter that was attached to my staff report. I read it somewhere that, oh yeah. So says to the west of the lot is a Honda Valley open space land easement and no development can occur. So is the easement on your property, or you're just referring to the fact that it's zoned PR adjacent to you? I don't see an easement on the survey.
No, just referring to that it was zoned PR and can't be developed.
Okay. And then there's a number of tree protection measures, and you didn't really speak to that in your presentation. Do you, you've reviewed them? Have any questions? Yeah,
I met with Setback out there twice, and we took a look at it. He told me what we would need to do when they get a GC on board. Obviously, they'll be meeting with Bill as well. We looked at what it would take to, one, protect the root configuration of that existing oak tree, and then what would be an acceptable trimming of that tree. It's gone quite rogue, it's quite wild, and so he said it would be healthy to do X, Y, and Z. And so those recommendations based on the arborist report I've reviewed, and we will review them with the general contractor and with Bill on site when we get to that point.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was all my questions for right now. So I'll open the public hearing. Ellen?
Yes, Susie. So we still do not have any members of the public joining us by webinar, but I would ask Kelly or Mary if there was any written public comment. Thank you.
Great.
Hi, this is Mary. We didn't receive any written comments.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Kelly, did you receive any?
Susie, no, I did not receive any comments.
Okay, so I'll close the public hearing. So now we'll go on to the deliberations. And I appreciate the additional information that you guys provided, or the explanation. The information was all there in the plans, and I saw it. And I'm sure staff explained it during the pre-application process regarding the concerns with demo versus rebuild and substantial redevelopment. And in this instance, regarding the interior setback, I mean, it's in the coastal high fire hazard area, so it is appropriate to have a greater separation between buildings. And so that's why I really wanted to understand if it's truly that wall was going to remain and how you were going to increase the height without removing the wall. And my understanding of what I heard this morning is that it'll be strengthened structurally, but it will not be removed. So that's good to hear. And I understand the constraints of the property for both requesting the the front setback and the interior setback, in that you want to avoid the steep slopes, not only to make construction easier, but also that's some policies in our general plan to avoid steep slopes. There's more vegetation down there. So in terms of the house siding location, that is appropriate. And in regards to the trees, I like that they're being protected, the two oak trees closest to the construction. However, in regards to the proposed conditions, oak tree conditions, I think they need to be more specific in terms of saying when the different items should occur. And I would be looking to change them some, in that requiring the pre-construction meeting, it just says shall be held with the contractors, specify who should be there. So that it should be, I think, a representative of the planning staff and the contractor and the arborist, and if necessary, the building inspector. So the planning staff can explain the tree protection measures, and then the building inspector also will know what kind of tree protection measures need to be in place throughout the whole construction to protect those trees. And then the number of these talk about the activities being supervised by qualified arborist. I almost said archaeologist. Arborist, okay, they're up here on the screen. That monitored by a qualified arborist, such as the pruning of the trees, the excavation. And so to ensure that to occur, I would require a contract with the archaeological monitor to be submitted along with your building permit that specifies what they're going to monitor and their schedule for monitoring, so that we know that it will be carried forward, because protection of oak trees in particular is important. And then the 3 oak trees, that they should be shown on the landscape plan. And I know I read the Single Family Design Board comments, and they're recommending landscaping to screen I think it was the north elevation, to help with that. So in addition to that screening shown on the plan, the location of those oak trees needs to be shown on the plan for PDA approval. And then at the conclusion of the construction project, I would, a tree monitoring report needs to be submitted so we can see what measures were taken in the field to protect those trees. Was there any changes in project design that needed to be implemented? And just any recommendations that the arborist may have to increase the health of the tree, because that one tree to the west of the project, it's getting pretty close to the construction zone. And so just if there's any recommendations that the arborist would have long-term, or for a certain period of time after construction, that those be identified and then be implemented by the property owner. So they're the same, they're just restructured, and then again specifying who should attend that pre-construction meeting, and then require the arborist monitoring during construction, and then also the tree monitoring report following construction, but prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy or final building sign off by the building inspector. I don't know if you have any questions on those.
You had one more. You had the oak tree to be shown on the landscape plan.
Oh, correct. Yeah. Yeah, that was already included. Well, that was a proposed condition, but I just specified where it needs to be shown and improved the location. So, but yeah, on the other ones are the tree protection zone shall be void of all activities. That'd still be on there. The project arborist shall monitor all all activities adjacent to the oak trees, that's still on there. Excavating and grading the foundation and cleaning. So those are still on there, but I just clarified where those items need to be shown and when they're supposed to be implemented. And then also regarding the demolition, or not the demolition, the issue regarding whether the project is a substantial redevelopment or not. I feel comfortable with the explanation given by you guys today. I do know, though, through history that sometimes projects change and evolve as it's working through the final phases of design review and final plans in that. So I will put a condition on the project that if the project is determined to represent a substantial redevelopment during the building plan check process, the project shall be reviewed by the staff hearing officer to determine if the change is in substantial conformance with this approval. And that doesn't need to be at a public hearing. It could be, just submit a letter and I can review it and say whether it is or not. Unless it is a significant change, then it trips the threshold for a typical substantial conformance. But if you need to request a substantial conformance, I would like it could follow our normal process. But in terms of staff, when they get that, I would like them to review it with me just to make sure, because like I said, this isn't a high fire hazard area. And so that is a separation between buildings is an issue. I do realize that 1111 Harbor Hills isn't up to the property line similar to this, but there's still, to provide distance would be appropriate. And then also, if in the field, if the building ends up being demolished more than what is shown on the plans, the construction shall be halted and the applicant or the property owner contact planning staff for determination of whether the interior setback modification is still valid. So if that was to occur during the field, we would have that. And then the archaeological monitoring would still be on the site, or still be the condition that it's shown on the plans. So do you have any questions with those?
No, I appreciate that.
Okay. So with those added conditions, I'm just looking at the findings. I would like to also add additional information in the eastern interior setback. Again, talking about some of the constraints on the site with the slope. So kind of saying what it says for the front too, that with the topography and the oak tree, that's another consideration taken into account with the approval of the modification. So with the revised finding regarding the eastern interior setback, and then the conditions as I've altered them at this meeting, added the ones and changed the formatting of the tree protection measures proposed, I could make the findings and approve your project. My action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. And they also have oversight of all my actions. And if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day appeal period. And if either of those would happen, Kelly would contact you. Okay?
Great.
Okay, thanks. So I adjourn the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Jens, thank you.